You're on to talk about your brilliant podcast, Rob Brydon and, not Rob Brydon on Vassos. And it's not a new podcast. It's the second series of a hit podcast. And it's a huge podcast because it's part of the Wondery gang.
It is.
Now, you know you've got a decent podcast when you're part of the Wondery gang. What does all this mean that I'm talking about?
Well, Wondery is Amazon Music, Wondery. I think they do Smartless, which is possibly one of the best. That's Sean Hayes, Jason Bateman and Will Arnett, which is just a great one. By the way, one of their best ones is with my friend Matthew Rees. And we've got Matthew Rees coming up. We did it a while ago now for the second time on Brydon and. He's such a great guest. He's a bit like me. He's kind of old school, you know. He likes an interview. He likes to perform and be interesting in an interview. So that's what it is. Yeah, it's just me talking to people, and I only did it because of lockdown, like a lot of people.
You did it in your loft?
In my little office at the top of the house, and started as a YouTube channel. Then it spread out into becoming the longer audio version. Kind of harks back to where I started on Radio Wales in the late 80s. Always loved interviewing people. And I'm doing 2 today after I do this. I really like it.
And you're really good at it. Now, the least performative person ever in an interview,
I know, yeah.
There's not been a competition for it, but Steve Coogan could be odds-on favourite to win it. That said, because of how he is and because of how you are together and different individually, one of my favourite podcasts I've ever heard in my life. Steve Coogan, Rob Brydon and Steve Coogan. Because you know each other, because he clearly trusts the bones of you. They say, you know, the best conversations on the radio should be like you're earwigging on two people who are having a cup of tea. Never before has this been truer. Wow. Oh my goodness me. What a chat you had. And you went to all the places, didn't you, with him?
Yeah. Well, I love Steve. I mean, we've got we've had a real relationship over the years. I've got a lot to thank him for. His company made Marion and Jeff and Human Remains in 2000, which were the shows that sort of broke me. I went into that relationship as a fan. You know, I used to watch what he did. There is no one better, in my opinion. Steve is as good as it gets. So then to get to know him, and then to be this kind of, he won't like this, double act. He doesn't like that. To become this kind of double act on the trip. So that when we've done 2 interviews now. The first one was over Zoom. This one that's currently up is in person. Yeah, and we got some good stuff from him. Because as you say, Steve is the opposite of someone like Will Ferrell, who is also in Barbie and is brilliant. Will, who I did a film with Vassos called
surprisingly
Holmes and Watson. There's a surprise.
Yeah.
Will is the loveliest guy and likes to make you laugh.
Yeah.
Steve kind of clocks on and clocks off, you know, and it can be frustrating because he's a genius. And you go, come on, do that thing. If you ask him, he will. When we were doing all the trips, we'd be in the car and I'd say, what would Alan make of such and such? And he just goes into it. Yeah. So you get in your private Alan Partridge. Yeah. And he does that in the, I get him to redo some of the great Partridge bits in this interview. But we know each other very well. And so we have a lovely conversation.
You do. And you talk about the fact when you first met him and you just wanted to meet him because you've been a fan. Yeah. And it was in a bar hotel in Reading?
It was after going to see him. I knew Julia Davis, and Julia and I had been in an improv group together. She was part of his live show. She was unknown, as was Simon Pegg, who was the other guy. Yeah. Unknown, Simon Pegg. You know? And I'd arranged to go to Reading, to the Hexagon, to see the show. I'd said to Julia, right, I'll come and see you afterwards at the stage door. So I go to the stage door. She'd forgotten all about it. At the time, I was rather hurt. I now realise it's very easy to forget who's coming to see you after a show. I've done it myself. We go back to the hotel. There's Steve. Oh, wow. I meet him. I chat to him. I'm desperately trying to make a connection. You know, I know this guy. Do you know that guy? That was the first meeting. I had his attention until a willowy blonde wafted by. And he went...
And what was his name?
Oh, very good. He said, I got to go. And off he went. And but that was enough. That was the beginning. And
you gave him a tape, a videotape?
I gave him Julia. I'd made a tape of 4 characters. One of them was Keith Barrett, that then went on to be in Marion and Jeff.
So this is video, not audio?
It was video, yeah.
Right.
Because I'd been in I couldn't get arrested. I was getting little parts, tiny parts in things. Then
Unsurprisingly.
Unsurprisingly, exactly. Then I got a part out of the blue in Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels as the traffic warden.
Yeah.
And I still get some people today who only know me from that. They're always Cockneys. They come up to me and go, "It's a traffic warden."
Yeah.
I have done some other work, but if that's what you like, that's fine. I made a tape off the back of that and did 4 characters. Julia got it to Steve. He saw it. He liked it. And, off we went.
The rest is history.